Namaste and in Catch, and welcome to this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and we speak to people, thought leaders all over the world about their inner and outer experiences and how they bridge them in their personal and professional lives. You're going to love this episode with Alvin Foo, who has been an amazing character in the cryptocurrency arena and the digital world, especially on LinkedIn, with hundreds of thousands of followers. You're going to find out some really interesting information today in this apocalyptic chat. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Alvin, it is so great to have you here. I've been looking forward to this conversation. You've done some amazing things and created a huge network beyond anything that I've seen on LinkedIn so far. And we'll get into that. But first of all, we talk about the inner and outer lives that we have, and we don't discuss the inner one. And so we're bereft of understanding, I think, or sharing, because most folks, when we start talking about that stuff, think we're crazy, insane, a little weird. It's real. So we need to acknowledge that. And if we're living half inside and half outside, we need to find the balance. And
Right.
this is what I hope to achieve with the show. So thanks for being with us and for being able to share your life.
Thanks for having me, Zen. I really appreciate you inviting me to the show and love to share what I know, what I've learned, what I've, at least experienced in the last 50 years.
Yeah.
So hopefully that I can impart something that someone can take this off as a good takeaway and learn something out of it.
Well, your experience and expertise is far better than most, and the experiences that you've had, the tenure in the field, wonderful things that you've done. So let's start with the beginning, right? When did you first notice that there was more to life than what others were participating in? Did you have any kind of an inner experience or something where you felt really connected and wasn't sure why, but growing up, we often have these kinds of things as kids before we develop the filters that our parents give us, right? So how did that happen with you, or did it?
Well, when I was growing up, I think my dad plays a lot of influence on me. I grew up in a family where my dad calls mostly the shot at home. He's like the boss, right? And live in a family where my dad was very strict and he wanted to make sure that that I go to school, that I complete my studies and then go and get a good job, right?
Hmm.
And from young, that has always been my dad's objective in life is to make sure that I stay on path, stay on track, and then graduate and then go and work for a big company. And that was his plan, right? And he wanted a son. He wanted a son who is a lawyer, and I did that as well. I think a big part of my life was actually influenced by him as I was growing up.
Hmm.
My mom played the role of a person that makes sure everything is in place at home, making sure that food on table, making sure that we have a warm home, right? But that really is the main driver. And I think a
Very
lot
nurturing
growing up,
environment, it sounds like.
yeah, well, in short, I think we had a very warm family.
Hmm.
Uh, maybe unique to me, special to me, but to a lot of people, I think this is what they call you have a lucky family.
Right. Yeah,
I think I have
absolutely.
a very fortunate and very lucky and also very fortunate upbringing, and I think
So this was your outer life. What was going on inside during this time? What were the things that you felt drawn towards, or possibly even experiences that you had of that childhood connectedness with nature and your surroundings?
I wasn't really a nature person. I there was never a time that I was really connected to nature, though. though there were several occasions that I was exposed to it. I
Hmm.
was not really nature. I mean, I was more active as an individual in sports than being connected to
I can
nature.
relate to
But
that one.
I mean, it's just like most kids, right? In
Yeah,
those era, I mean, most kids are more, active in sports, active in playing around than to be nature. I think nature is
sure.
something
We
that's
want
for
to
people to connect
socialize and
with.
play with friends, right?
Absolutely. I think nature is when you grow up, when you start to get a sense. I actually grew up and started to connect to nature sometime maybe 18, between 18, I think 18 years old. It
Hmm.
was the first time that I had a friend who then connect me to nature, where I was introduced to bonsai. That tiny
Yeah,
little
yeah, yeah,
tree,
yeah.
right? The Japanese tree.
Meticulously taken care of, right?
Really, it's so
Yeah.
delicate because imagine the size of a regular tree, right? And it goes from that size to this size. So there's a lot of care that you have to take care of that very delicate tree. It's a massive tree, but it's shrunk into a mini tree.
Right. Well, it's kind of like taking the macro and putting it into a micro, right? Where you have the larger understanding, and yet because it's so small, you can develop the connection, the discipline, the trimming, the care, the concern, all of that, and the discipline, right? That goes along with that we often miss. Now, in the transition from your childhood into this friend you had at 18 and introducing you to nature, were there things that you noticed that ethical and moral choices that you found within yourself? Was there consistency with others, or did you find yourself different in your because
I
of your
mean,
upbringing and your sense of value?
well, the connection to bonsai at that time
Hmm.
really changes me because I've always been very active. I've always been very impatient because everything I want to do, I want to do it fast. And we talk about bonsai, right?
Right.
Everything is delicate, right? Whether it's trimming, whether you're watering the plant and all that. Right? So it's a lot of work into it just to maintain just one tree. And imagine I've got at the time at the peak I had like 200 trees,
Oh my God.
200, 200 little mini bonsais at home. So over the years, I started to acquire and
Was,
planted the trees, right?
do you think you had enough? I mean, for crying out loud, two or three would take some time. 200? Wow. Did you have any spare time?
Uh, so I spent I mean, I was in college then.
Oh,
I
so this
literally
was
spent,
your spare time.
that was my spare time. So I spent a lot of time in shaping those trees because a lot of those trees that came to me initially are out of shape most of the time.
Hmm.
Then you need to shape them, right? And it takes time. And and to shape a tree to the shape that you want usually will take somewhere between 12 to 18 months. 12 to 18 months. So you need to constantly shape that tree over a period of long time. So that
Sure.
that teaches me to be patient because anything that you need to do right with shaping a tree takes a long time.
Right.
And
And
that
especially with 200 of them, that's going to be
right.
even more time.
That's a lot of work. I mean, not all 200 that you need to shape because some of them are already shaped up, right?
Hmm.
Those that are new that you want to shape them takes time. And
Sure.
and 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 the progress that you're making on these trees are very, very slow.
Did you find that in that slowness and the meticulous trimming that was necessary, how did that affect your view and your perspective of your studies and where you were going in life? Did it help congeal a more clear path for you with all of the trimming and the time to, chop wood and carry water, or be in that
I mean,
place where you're able to just be with the tree and be open to the thoughts that emerge?
it teaches me. I think I said that word before. I think it really teaches me to be patient.
Hmm.
It kind of like encouraged me to think slower, right? Now when you most people when you make a decision, right, when you decide on something, right, you either decide very quickly, and most of the time when you decide very quickly, the chances of you getting it right is like 90% wrong, right? And the people who actually spend some time in making that decision, right, doing the proper analysis, doing some research, it may take time, but your likelihood of getting to that right decision are more likely than not that you get to a right decision, or I would say a better decision.
Sure.
I'm not saying that
Absolutely.
so somehow the connection with nature through bonsai, right, to handling them, shaping them, and feeling the earth, feeling the trees, and see how the tree grows, right?
Well, you got to
That
see patterns and cycles and being able to identify them and how to craft the larger pattern that you wish. And your description of this sounds and the slowing down, right? The patience. Today we hear this phrase, you got to slow down to go fast, right? And what you just said exemplifies the meaning of that. You have to be
absolutely.
meticulous. You have to strategize and plan and be in the moment without attachments to the past or the future, yet being mindful of them. Kind of
So
harvesting the past in order to nourish the future.
absolutely right. I mean, it really taught me to look at things broader, right? It really broadened my horizon because, and it also teaches me, right, to be mindful. Like when as kids, right, we are not mindful. I mean, our thinking are all over the place, right? And
Yeah.
when you start to get into that whole thing of shaping the tree, right?
Hmm.
You have to be very mindful what you, because as I've said, it's delicate, right? I mean, if you start to shape or you start to bend the tree, the bark's a bit too hard, right? It breaks. It will break, right? And
Hmm.
then you'll start all over again. So so that teaches you to be mindful, careful, and somehow take your time, right? Because the tree is going to take its time and cost, right, to get there.
Sure.
And no amount of pushing, right, on the tree is going to shape the tree immediately. And you gotta wait for nature to take its own course.
Well, that learning is just, it's phenomenal that, and most of us don't get that. I'm familiar with, actually met the guy, T. Harv Eker. He's a fairly well-known self-development guy here in America. And this has been probably 25 years ago. And he says, what you do anywhere, you do everywhere. So those habits that you develop, the perspective that you're talking about, that ripples through everything that you do, whether you realize it or not, right?
I mean, I always say this, right? We are what we do. We are what we read. We are what we do. We are what we eat, right?
Right.
So everything about us, right, is really a reaction of what we do. And the reaction is that's me, right? If I start to get into certain tasks long term, I mean, I'm
Mhm.
not talking about doing something for short term, for long term.
Right.
And I think in terms of spending enough time on one particular task, right, of shaping up those bonsai, that took a long time. That took years. So, and that somehow built habit, built character, and then that takes you, and then that will have an impact on your future in terms of what you do in life and how you address your work and your attitude in life. Really, it has shaped my life in that sense. I mean, that aside, but the fact is that few years of really, really, going all in on bonsai really shaped me.
It had to have been, I'm just, imagining what that would be like. It feels wonderful. Now, how did you notice those patterns reflecting in the world around you? Was there a disparity? Did you find similar patterns in others? Was there um, almost a reserved or observational learning that you were able to achieve with others because of the discipline, the patience, and the observation?
I think a lot of the thing that I do these days, whether that's going to be starting up my own company or working for someone else, working for multinational and managing lots of people,
Mm-hmm.
uh, a lot of my traits, a lot of my character building really started from young, really. Uh, the connection to nature, bonsai to be more specific, and and also the impact that my dad has on me
Mm-hmm.
has somehow shaped me in my after in my career journey in my entire career, right?
Sure.
And that didn't change very much over the years. Uh, there was, I mean, along the way, I'm sure there must be a lot of improvement, but the main traits don't change, right? I'm mindful, I'm very focused, I'm very strategic, uh, and I'm also very patient, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you look at how I invest into companies and all that, right? Very patient, and
Well, those
I always
kinds
believe that,
of activities, I'm sorry, I just want to reflect those kinds of activities, example or in the accomplishments, the respect, the honor, the things that you've achieved in how you've dealt with people and the response that you've got from them. Far better with that patience and perseverance than if you were taking quick action and snap decisions and things of that nature, right? It's short-term um,
but I
gain,
mean, Zen, but it doesn't.
but
But
long-term, it's
I mean, but that doesn't mean that I've not made any rash decision in my life. I've made several. I mean, I'm only
sure. We're,
human.
we're emotional beings, right? We
I'm only
we
human,
leap
right?
sometimes.
But in general, when I'm calm, when I'm in a right state of mind,
Hmm.
I'm usually the same old Alvin when I was young, right?
Sure.
I'm just very very slow, very calm, and also very patient making this. But there were occasions I was rash, and like I said, more than 90% of those decisions that I made wrong, right? Those are not good ones, and usually because you have never thought about it. And even if you have made a good decision out of that short period of time, like
Right.
usually it's because you're lucky, not because you're good at it.
Well,
Because
it's because you try, right? You don't sit back and think about, well, all the things that might happen. It's like, well, let's try it and find out. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Okay, we'll move on. Right? That seems to be how you work through things. Now, in the efforts of getting your education, becoming a lawyer, which from what you said, your father's hopes and dreams for you, you achieved those early. How did you determine where you wanted to go with that education and the kinds of things that you were thinking you could do in the world? Did you think about major change, minor change, just making a living, serving others? How did you determine that?
I never thought about it then, because becoming a lawyer is what my dad wants.
Hmm.
He dreams of a son. He dreams of a son who is a lawyer, right? So that was his dream, and to me, getting that for getting achieving becoming a lawyer is what I want to do for him. How would that change my life, and how would that be? Whether that's going to be uh, something that I would do for the rest of my life, or whether there's a plan for me, right? Whether I would plan
Hmm.
ahead. I've got no plans at the time. All I did was I just want to complete my studies. I just want to go to work, and God knows what will happen in the future. So I don't have a plan. Many a times in my career, right, I tried to plan. I did, but most of the time it didn't work out the way I wanted to.
Sure.
Right. But I'm not saying just because it didn't work out the way I wanted, it was a bad direction. It was a bad plan.
Well, stepping stones, right? It's
Yeah, I
never
mean,
really mistakes. We tend to be self-deprecating and self-effacing and beating up on ourselves. And, the reality is we made an effort. We learned something. There was no failure.
yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's hard to plan your entire life, or it's even hard to even these days even hard to plan 12 months, right?
Hmm.
Because of AI and so forth. So at that time when I first came out, graduated with my law degree, right, I just went out to work and trying to figure out whether this would be a job that I love, that I would fall in love, or that I love this job. And and I only worked for 2 years, only 2 years as a lawyer, and I gave up. 2 years. And to discover that, this is not the kind of job that I want to do for the rest of my life, that at least I know I've been
And thankfully, it only took you 2 years, right? Some people go for an entire career not liking what they're doing.
there you are, right? So I was very lucky that I discovered that early. And I also had the opportunity to communicate to my dad, and he was a bit disappointed because he said, you did the entire law degree and then you work for 2 years and then you want to give it up.
Oh, yeah, I can relate. My dad worked for General Motors. I was orphan adopted, but I raised by a really wonderful family. Dad was a tool and die maker, and he made plastic injection molds, machined them for General Motors. So he used to say, anybody can give you a shot, but I can make the needle. And so he was really attempting to, um, instill in me to go to work for a big company, get the benefits, retire from there, and then, have a good life. And so I tried that
Mm.
and got involved with the aerospace industry, was, the young kid that got promoted above everybody else and was a wave maker and a disruptor as a result. Ended up trying to get interpersonal skills classes instituted in our department, let alone the plant. And wow, I pushed for it and became one of those who was outside looking in over time, and ended up being expelled. Went through a divorce and expulsion from church. So in the matter of 3 months. So it's like after I put my best effort forward in all three of those places, it turns out I wasn't really supposed to do that anyway. And so the argument that, not necessarily the argument, but the discussions I had with my dad afterwards, says, look, Dad, I tried it your way. It didn't work. I need to follow my heart now.
Well, I had that same conversation as well. And he was a bit unhappy because he felt, I could have, I could have become a good lawyer, right? And
Sure.
he felt that, it was a ways that I went through the whole course and at the end not practice.
Mhm.
So,
Well, Dad
but I
actually
said,
wanted to become a lawyer, right? That's what because of the job he had, he was able to put my mother through school, and she got a degree in music and then in education, and she taught English and Lit. Well, he set his being a lawyer dream aside for the family, which I thought, I didn't know about that until later in life, but that was a huge sacrifice for him, I think, even though life went well.
mm,
But my concern, and this is an example, maybe you can reflect on this too, when we make those kinds of decisions and they aren't really the right ones, our bodies reject it over time. He ended up getting rheumatoid arthritis as a machinist. Well, that's a kiss of death, right? You want to
mm,
use your hands. And so he only made it, 38 years, but that's still quite a bit of time. But he had to quit because he could no longer use his hands.
mm,
So for me, understanding as I do, the quantum world, the spiritual world, material world, and how those interact, whether we realize it or not, our bodies are instruments, right? They're going to tell us whether we're doing the right thing or not. We just have to pay attention. And he didn't. And he just pushed on through and ended up suffering for it,
right.
unfortunately. Now, if we can learn from that, great.
Our body actually actually gives out a lot of signal. And
Mhm.
most of the time, I dare say 99% of the time, they're all right.
Well, yeah,
And
and being an Easterner, if I may use that term, you have a much different culture and philosophy of life than Westerners do. So you're more in touch with that side. What do you see the differences being?
in terms of,
In terms of what we were just talking about, your connection with your body and your spirit and the mindfulness of it.
well, now number one, I'm probably one of I can't comment for others, but at least for me, right? I my instinct, I actually trust my instinct like 99% of the time.
As you
So
should.
so so and I think all the instinct was probably developed over the years when I was growing up, right? And because I trust my instinct so much that my instinct, I've used that right to make a lot of major calls in life. So a lot of decisions that I make in life, I actually rely a lot on my instinct. And it's probably unique to me, but 99% of my instinct are always right. Very few, in fact, almost next to none. So,
It may
but
be unique, however, it's very much in line with indigenous ancient philosophy known as the three brain system. First brain's your gut,
mm,
intuition, gut
mm,
feelings, right? We got more neurosensors in the gut than we do in our head.
right,
Second brain's the heart. You discern, right? You get the information and you discern its value, and then you move into the third brain, which is where you make your choices as to what to do with it. The
correct.
quality of information in that process is 100% better than just thinking things and trying to shove it through your body. My dad being an example of how it affected him. Your intuition has led you into some really cool areas that you're one of the pioneers in the blockchain and
Mm.
crypto area and things like that. Were there transitions that you made on the way there, or did your patience and perseverance, and because of that, opportunities showing up, right, that you were able to see, perceive, intuit, and then move forward with? Did you make a slow progress into the digital space, or was this something you thought would be
Oh,
available?
my journey into digital space started in 1996.
Hmm.
Uh, at that time, how now there are two things that happened that actually really shaped my digital thinking. One, now I came from a legal background.
Hmm.
I work in an advertising company, a traditional advertising company, even before I started my
Right.
journey on
And
digital.
being a lawyer and working in advertising, you understand the psychology of sales.
Right. So working in an advertising company also shaped my mind. Yeah, because I had the opportunity to now while I'm in the advertising industry, I am I am actually servicing a lot of businesses that is not advertising, right?
Right.
I'm providing advertising services to all industries, whether that's going to be an auto industry that you talked about, GM, right? Whether
Hmm.
that's going to be fast moving consumer goods, airlines, and so on. So that gives me a broad view of what's possible,
Right.
right?
Wow.
That gave me
What an opportunity with that kind of smattering of, okay, it's like, what choices do you want to make? What a basket of fruit.
exactly. So I had the opportunity to see the world in a different way, and I thought, I could embark on any track because
Hmm.
the world is my oyster. I can address many track. But what changes my thinking was the fact two things happened. One, I stumbled onto a thing called internet. The dial-up, as I'm sure you're aware, probably in the US it was called AOL. In Malaysia we had the same version called AOL, and it was
But there
the
were
early days
bulletin
of
boards before that,
right. I mean there was,
or
but
early 90s, and I think mid 90s, yeah, AOL emerged.
correct. So commercially in the mid 90s was a time where internet was really made commercially available to most people,
Hmm.
right? There was the 9.6K modem that you dialed through your phone.
Oh, dial-up was
Yes.
horrific, though.
I still can remember that tweaking sound as you're
Oh,
connecting it.
yeah, it's like a fax machine, right? Oh man.
Right. And what now? So that gave me a glimpse of what the information superhighway could do.
Hmm.
And that term information superhighway was coined in a book that also changed my life. The book that was given to me by my best buddy at that time was a book the name of the book is called The Road Ahead by Bill Gates.
Yeah.
By Bill Gates. So this was a book in 1990, I think 95, 96. And I read that book. And that book talks about the future. And that book gave me a glimpse again, bigger than a glimpse now, that the term information superhighway. And when I saw all that, I saw, and because coming from advertising industry, that I saw the industry.
Right.
It
all made sense.
I started to apply them. I said, now, the current industry is everything offline. Now, once you go online, a lot of these businesses, right, will need to transform, right? Obviously, the digital transformation will take time, but it will have to transform.
Yeah,
right?
it goes from brick and mortar to click and mortar.
Exactly. So that's where we get e-commerce and so forth, right? So, and then of course, at that time, we have companies like Amazon. And even though Amazon at the time was like purely an online bookstore at that time, right? But that gave me, again, a whole new perspective that shit, now the entire Barnes and Nobles, right? Smack right on your laptop. Shit, that's great, right? No, there was no laptop. It was called PC. All on your PC. So I saw many possibilities. And that was the point that I decided I want to get into the tech business. So the year that I started getting into tech business was 1997, that I want to do something in tech. And that was the beginning of my tech journey as an entrepreneur.
Did you get training? Were you self-taught?
Self-taught.
Was there? Okay.
Self-taught. The beauty
that's
of
cool.
the beauty at
Me
that
too.
time was,
I don't know what I can't do, but let's find out, right?
Right. So it was self-taught. I never could. I mean, I did a business was entirely based on networking. I never learned networking my entire life. But because there's the connection to the internet, there were some books, right? I was able to learn how to cream a cable, how to connect to a TCP/IP network, right? How to connect to a machine from a LAN to a WAN network. So I learned all that.
It's like the different branches of your bonsai, right? Each one of them has a possibility with it.
Correct. So, again, going back to the bonsai story. So, because of the fact that I was taught to be mindful and also patient, that I was willing, that I could start, doing something else entirely out of my comfort zone, right? Because I was, again, patient and mindful.
Sure, something new. You don't know what's going on. So, the trick is to be comfortable in the uncomfort, right? You understand there's a learning curve that's going to take place. And so you patiently, for the most part,
it was a very steep learning curve, very, very steep, because I had to learn everything from scratch. And there were a lot of terms that I don't understand at the time. I'm thankful that I have got a team of people that was working together with me. I've got two other co-founders who were also with me. Now, at that time, because it was very early days of internet, the market was a lot more forgiving than today. If I were to do it today, right, trying to embark on that journey, I would fail. I would fail.
Get eaten up, right?
Because the speed of what's happening right now in tech, it's just too fast.
Yeah.
It's not forgiving. The market will not wait for you. Right? But in 97, 98, right, it was so early. And internet at the time, most people
market was just developing then, right? This was just beginning to become a thing. Now it's spawning things, which is really great. Now, did you find that in your process of learning, the questions that you had that couldn't be answered in the moment, did those remain, and then eventually you got a response from the universe, if you will, or through your activity that answered that question? And the reason I ask this is there's a great writer, Rene Maria Rilke, you're probably familiar with, and he says, you ask the questions, but you can't answer them or you wouldn't ask them, right? So you got to let life answer that, which is the experience that you have in moving forward, and the holding of that attention, intention, and interaction as you're moving towards a goal, not necessarily knowing the right questions to ask, let alone the answers that are going to come. Did you find that in those questions that weren't answerable in the moment, that they eventually did get answered and you had maybe a greater understanding because of the patience and perseverance you had?
I, I, at that point when I was starting up the company, I had no clue where I was heading, other than the fact that I was trying to create the services that will work at that point of time. I wasn't looking for an answer. I wasn't looking for an answer whether I'll become successful, but I was certainly trying to get to a point where I can put things together as a service and offer it out to the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
So
How did you go through that process? What did you look at to determine what services that were viable?
I mean, I did my research.
Okay.
I obviously have to do some research, right? On number one, whether there's a market for it, right? Whether and how big is that market? And who are
Right.
the potential audience,
Sure.
right?
Well, any
I mean,
business plan, that's part of an integral part of the process, right?
so there was an initial, simple research I did that I knew that if I create this product and if it works, right, I
Mm-hmm.
would be able to sell this product. Period, right? Whether they'll become successful or not, right? I mean, obviously there's a hope, right? Just like when I
Sure.
was trying out that bonsai, there's a hope that I will get to that shape that I want, right?
Right.
And it will take time. Similarly, when I'm running a business, it's the same. That you have a plan of 18
And
months,
there's
24 months.
indicators along the way that you're on the right track,
Yeah, I mean,
as well
there
as
was a plan.
indicators that maybe you don't want to do this, right?
Yeah, but I don't have an answer to everything. I don't even have an answer whether I'll get to the next stage, but I certainly know that if I keep on doing and improving,
Mhm.
like how I would have,
Something
like,
will
yeah,
happen.
I'll get there, right?
Yeah.
So in order to now let's now from young I've been taught, right? If you start to think of a big plan, the likelihood of you getting to the big plan very slim, right? It's better to have small milestone, right? And
Yeah.
trying to achieve that small milestone, you're more likely to achieve,
Oh,
more, you
absolutely.
probably have more achievement
Yeah.
than trying to think of the big goal.
Well, entrepreneurs, you start with a vision in mind, then you back it up and you question, okay, what are the steps I'm going to need
I'm
to get there? And it seems to be, and maybe you can reflect on this, it takes the same energy to do something small scale as it does to do something large scale.
right. I mean, even though the small scale is not really tiny scale, I'm sure right, Elon Musk is planning to launch a rocket,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we
Another one.
obviously we were seeing a rocket going up to the space and then land on a boat, right? Now, for him to get there, I'm sure he must have gone through tons of milestones, right?
Oh, yeah,
Because
absolutely.
yeah, I'm sure before you get to the next milestone, right, is that first, get to the first milestone first,
Right.
right?
Well, coming out of the aerospace industry that I did, back when I was in it in the 80s, research and development was 10 to 15 years.
You are
Now it's 6 to 9 months.
exactly, and SpaceX is launching rocket, right, like 2 to 3 times a week,
Hmm.
a week, right? And Elon Musk is projecting that he will be able to launch a rocket like 2 to 3 times a day.
Sure. Expensive testing, but testing still has to be done.
Absolutely. So the scale of things that are moving right now is massively different than in the past. I'm sure. I'm sure you could also felt it as well.
Oh, just in our lifetimes. Wow. Imagine an octogenarian or even a centenarian that seemed, 100 years worth of progress. That's just
Amazing,
mind-boggling,
right?
right?
But I dare say that what has transpired over the last 30, 40 years, right, is bigger than what has transpired over the last 2,000 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
And
progress in the last 40 years or 50 years are just amazing, especially the last 30 years. It's just humongous.
and
There are
we're going to
more
see a huge evolutionary leap coming up once we get settled with and comfortable with the new technology that's coming, and the fears are assuaged, right?
Well, any new introduction of technology always will, I mean, there's always going to be people who's going to lose their job, right? And people who are willing to learn and relearn and unlearn, right? These are the people that's going to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And just like any new technology that's being introduced, right? Whether through industrialization and to ICT and then now internet, right?
Right.
It may change the landscape. It may also cause some people to lose their job, but new jobs will be created,
Sure.
new
Absolutely.
opportunity will be created, right? And there's going to be like new companies. If you look at the S&P 500 30 years ago, 40 years ago versus now, that list is going to look very different. And if you fast forward 30 to 40 years, right, or 20 years, right, that S&P list is going to look very different,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm sure.
Absolutely. We can notice that just in the last few years. In the future, we talked about the effects of the pandemic and the sequestration, getting people to be able to self-examine and determine a bit more about who they are, what they believe in, where they want to take their lives, what they want to support. The virtual scene that took place as a result, all the different groups coming together, people looking for each other, believing that there's a different way that things can be addressed. How do you see the technology boon, and as well as the spiritual evolution that people are having today that's been going on? We referenced the Mayan calendar, for instance, and how the escalation of consciousness and awareness took place from 87 to 2012, and so we had an apex. Well, what happens after that? Once you have that awareness and consciousness, you take it into the world with you. Again, Harv Ecker's thing, what you do anywhere, you do everywhere. So essentially, from a quantum physics standpoint, your vibration has changed because your being has changed. Now that affects those around you on a subtle level. So according to the conversation Jose and Arguelles and I had, he believes that once this shift takes place, that everything that isn't congruent with harmony in the universe and with people and planet will rise to the surface for review. Now, do you see that happening? And if so, where might it be going? What do you see happening 5, 10 years from now? Or do
From
you?
from a technology standpoint,
Technology and what you see in the world, because you got your fingers all over the globe.
right? I mean, 10 years from now, well, the last 10 years was already very fast, right?
Hmm.
The next 10 years is going to be faster. And sometimes when we do, I mean, I'm doing investing, right? So when I look at a lot of companies that tries to project 5, 10 years, and I look at what they're projecting,
Mm-hmm.
you could see a great shift, everything going into automation, right? There will be less people working, or there will be, I would say there'll probably be less jobs being done by human, more jobs being done by machine,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Would
Obviously, I'm
that
not
give
saying
us
that
more time to actually enjoy arts and culture, because it's been taken away?
absolutely. That's so that's what I was trying to say, that
Okay.
the
Sorry, I
idea
leapt
is that
ahead.
human will do less work so that you have more time to do more meaningful stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the cost of doing work, some is as bold as predicting that a lot of these services is going down to zero, right? Now, similarly to what we were saying earlier, right? That technology has helped you to save time and so forth. So those services that you were using, or those tasks that you were doing previously, you have to pay for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now it's zero. I mean, I'm not saying it's zero because there's no cost to it, but it's almost next to zero.
Right.
And many tasks in the future, including driving, one example would be driving, that would be replaced by a machine. So the
Already
cost of
has.
driving,
We've got all kinds of Waymo Jaguars that are all over the Phoenix Valley.
absolutely. So driving, it could, I mean, it's one example of a task that used to be that people pay money for that service, right? In the future, that cost of that service is zero. So a lot of services that can be replaced will be replaced, and that cost of that service is going to be almost next to zero, right? And the challenge is that where do we go from here when everything
That's going
starts
to
to go
wreak
to this
havoc on the financial markets, right? And so how do you see, now we're going to kind of segue into crypto here because we don't have a whole lot of time left. But do you see a leveling that is going to be necessary? And how do you see that happening?
Well, my view of crypto in terms of where it's going to be in 10 years from now. Now we have a lot of coins now. If you look at coin market cap, or if you look at the coin gecko, you will see that there are tens of thousands or probably hundreds of thousands of different tokens. The
Right.
world don't need that many coins. That's
No.
the truth, right?
And pretty much every new company's got their own NFT, right?
Yeah, NFT was like 2 years ago. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
world don't need garbage like that, and certainly don't need a lot of token that has got absolutely no utility and zero value. But certainly what it will change is the fact that as the world becomes more decentralized, because the movement in Web 3.0 is all about decentralization. We,
Right.
I'm not saying that the entire world, government will be run decentralized, but there's a potential that the world in the Web 3.0 world is going to be a combination
Sure.
of,
Well, and the regenerative movement stresses that, we need to be bioregional, right? We need to make those choices that are healthy, and they can't be made from a centralized place.
correct. So that's why Bitcoin is actually a very good stored value, a good solution to. I think Bitcoin is a solution to most people. And the only reason why a lot of people still don't own it is because they are not aware of what Bitcoin is solving their problem. But the truth is that everyone needs one,
Right.
because that
Well, and even
becomes
banks
like
have
a debt.
accepted. The nonprofit that I run, Planetary Citizens, one of the ways we receive donation is through crypto. So this wasn't happening 5 years ago. So they
Uh,
escalated. Now, do you see, like with Bitcoin, it's kind of what used to be the US standard, right? The USD was the global financial currency, right? And now that's changing. So how do you see Bitcoin or the crypto in general moving towards something that is more cohesive globally than the fractionated activity that we've had with currency and the different values of it?
I think Bitcoin has done that already very successfully. It is probably one of the most acceptable currency that is fully decentralized, not controlled by any organization, and fully transparent, and at the same time recognized and acceptable by many at this one time. And it's probably one of those currency in the world that none of the government, right, has got control. And perhaps I think that's why I said earlier, it's probably one of the best solutions that the world needs. Every one of us needs one, because it is the only one currency that you cannot print anymore beyond that 21 million.
Right. Well,
Unlike
yeah, the US just did print on demand, right? Like
US,
Amazon.
yeah.
And that's really harmful, and it's caused all kinds of ruckus. Now, do you see that in this near future that the shift from the financial world that we've been in to this new financial landscape helps people to become more
Global.
Yeah, it's global was one of the things I was thinking more on a personal level of personally viable, right? Where, we have all these different currently currencies and exchange rates and all this kind of stuff, sanctions and all those kinds of things that I think are bullshit. But, it's about time we learn to live together as a global community, right? This is
I
that evolutionary
my,
leap
my,
that
my
I think we're poised for.
right. I mean, my personal view on that is that I don't think uh, I don't think a lot will change on the fiat, because every country wants to control. I mean, I cannot see how US would want to give up control of
Right,
their currency and adopt likely adopt Bitcoin as a currency.
right,
I'm not sure. At least that I know China is not doing that. At least the big nations are not doing it. And if the big nations don't do it right, then you will not get the support that you need, right, to
sure.
develop a single currency for the world. Very difficult. But I do see an opportunity where the recognition of these currency, at least from the government side, would at least, right,
Hmm.
accepting it, and probably allowing that currency to be
Right.
in the balance sheet. I think that's important. That's key. That would put recognition into Bitcoin, that at least it can stay as part of your national reserve.
Sure.
I
And
think
if
that will
we ever have something that's ubiquitous, that's generations away, probably.
probably
Unless there's, some things that happen. We don't know what the future is going to hold. All we can do is harvest the past, make the best choices we can in the present, and hope for a better future. And there's a lot of folks that are doing that. You're one of them. I see a lot of things that you're doing. You're always promoting good things, conscious efforts, mindful expressions. And
positive. I well, my one of the things that really motivates me, that I want to do all the time, is to promote and share very positive messaging,
Mhm.
right? And because I've met a lot of friends along the way, that many are in a state of negative, right? That
Most
I've always
people
lived
are,
my
I
entire
think,
life trying to encourage them, motivate them. I said,
Right,
if I can do it at scale, that will be lovely. And social media has provided me, right, that tool to be able to share that messaging on a
right,
global level.
right. Well, I'm hoping that our association will help us both do that,
I'm sure.
right?
I'm sure, man. I'm sure.
Now, in this future, what are you've mentioned a few things. What advice would you give to your best friend or neighbor or even somebody you don't even know? Because that advice ought to be similar, right? What do you see the future as, and how do you think or what advice might you share that would be beneficial on a daily as well as long-term basis?
This is my favorite, and my favorite advice that I give to people to staying relevant. Now, staying relevant is not about for someone who's young, who's someone in the 30s or 40s, but staying relevant is someone even for your age and my age,
Hmm.
right? And staying relevant is also anti-aging. And the only way that people can stay relevant is to do three things. One, learn, unlearn, relearn, right? You must have and you have to do it, and you have to do
Unlearning
this.
is so important with the
Correct.
programming that we've had over the last millennia. I mean, you've got one book that controls million or could be even billions of people, and it's based on some patriarchal notion of command and control.
Absolutely right. I mean, in today's world, because of the proliferation of a lot of technology, including AI,
Hmm.
you need to be able to not just master learning, is to be able to master how to unlearn those stuff that you have read
Right.
and then relearn again. And if you cannot do all these three, right, it's very hard for you to stay relevant. And the problem with a lot of people who are coming from the old generation is that they had learned, but they have problem unlearning it. And when you have problem unlearning it, there's no way that you can relearn. No way, because you're stuck with so much legacy and baggage that you are stuck in that era. And most people are stuck in that era. And unfortunately, they have not mastered the art of unlearning before you can move to relearning.
You know, that's great advice. And was there something in addition to that that, you know, you've got learning the unlearning and what's the goal? What's um, what's the best learning?
Well, learning in my view is that now again, depending on your objective in life, right? Uh, that learning bit, right? It would have to be something that you love to do, right? If you have to choose a path in life that you want to embark on that path, right? You have to embark on a path that you have to choose something that you love to do. And if you love what you're doing, then whatever that you're doing, right, is not work,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
true. Very true.
So,
Thank you. This has just been a wonderful conversation, Alan. I really appreciate the time. And, you know, as you were talking about the learning and unlearning, it reminded me with Planetary Citizens, I created a chat GPT and I loaded it with ancient and current texts. So instead of doing all the research through all of them, you can ask the question and it queries all of them. The Bhagavad Gita, the Vedas, Quran, Bible, Egyptian Book of the Dead, Tao Te Ching, right? All of these things I've got built into this chat. So, and it handles real world questions from that perspective too. So if you want great information, isn't that a good thing, a good resource to inquire with? And you know, these things were like, it was just suggested. I had a friend of mine that's doing crypto that made his own chat GPT. He says, try this out. I was like,
right.
didn't know you could do it.
I actually created a lot of I trained my chat GPT on a specific task, and they actually do quite well. Now, uh, I've got a chat GPT for investment. I've got a chat GPT for crypto. I've got a chat GPT for some of my hobbies, right? Because
So you have a
so
whole
so
council.
you can narrow down your chat GPT into a way that really suits you, or that could be what you have just mentioned earlier about spiritual and so
That's part
forth.
of the learning.
Absolutely right. I
You'll
think
get rid of it.
I would love to take try it out and see how that works. Certainly wouldn't want to look at what you have trained your chat GPT to do.
And it has immense possibility at present. And it's just amazing. Um, Speaking amazing, you're an amazing guy, Alvin. And this has been a wonderful time. I know you've got things to do. I appreciate your insight, wisdom, your sharing, and the opportunity to get to know you better.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation. I'm sure we'll catch up again next round to do a second round in the future. But really enjoyed the conversation. Thank you very much, then.
Very good. You're welcome, Alvin. And namaste and in la catch. And thanks for sticking with us for this episode of One World in a New World. I'm your host, Zen Benefiel, and I'll see you next time.